Hi everyone, my name is Guiot. My pronouns are they, or she, or it. I'm from Turin, in Italy, and today I was asked to make an against the clock video where I'll be making a track in 30 minutes. The software I'll be using is TidalCycles paired with SuperCollider, as is usual. So I was asked to make a track. That's not something that I do usually, in the sense that when I'm making music, I'm not making it with the intent of recording it. Usually when I'm preparing a track, ideally it's for live performance. So I will be doing things with that in mind. And as we go on, I'm going to explain my choices related to that. Okay, so let's start doing something. I will be using a custom synth that I have, which is very simple. It's just a very simple FM synth. And I will be using microtonality. Usually I divide the octave into 53 pitches. We won't go into too much detail because it's very complicated, obviously, but the main things you need to know is that 22 steps are a fourth, to put it simply, and 31 steps are a fifth, and obviously 53 are an octave. And these are intervals that we will use a lot. Okay, so let's start by writing a very simple melody, something like this. Okay, it is a fairly low volume for now. I will add some distortion. It still has low volume, but it's fine because we will build on top of it. So, recently I've been learning how to use the at notation that Haskell told me about, and I think it's a very powerful tool, and I will be using for this piece. So, how does it work? In this pattern, the 200 note, which is suffixed with an H, which stands for half, lasts half as much as the other notes. This doesn't specify its length related to the cycle, but only related to the other members of the cycle. So this is a quarter, and this is a third, for example. And this is 3. So I think it's a very interesting tool because it allows us to actually I'm missing an 8 here. Okay, it's a very complicated tool. It's a very interesting tool because it does something very complicated, and it allows us to modify rhythms in ways that are very interesting. Because if we modify one value, because this codes its relationship to other values, by modifying one of them, all of them are modified, and so the whole rhythmic structure of the pattern is modified. So even if we use a very simple melody with only 5 notes, that can still be fairly complicated because we can just change one of the rhythmic values to change all of them. Okay, so let's talk about stack. Stack is a function that a lot of people who use TidalCycles use a lot, because it allows you to build upon what you're doing. I prefer not to use that because if I'm doing something, I'm doing it for live performance. And if you use a stack, you tend to build a very, very large file, which is hard to scan through with your eyes while you're playing. I like to build patterns that can basically fit into one screen by themselves, and stack is not very good for that. Also, I like patterns that are very coherent in the sense that there is only one generating melody on the bottom of it all, and then you apply functions to that pattern rather than doing separate things and stack the two things together. So the functions that it creates for that is start with. And let's start by doing something quite simple like this. Okay, if we use that notation, it's very difficult to make the delays line up, because by changing any value here, everything changes, and I don't know exactly what subdivisions we are using, so I won't put too much effort into lining things up with that. Okay, so I use an ID here, but I can replace it with a more interesting function. Obviously, I'm using some custom functions that you can find on my GitHub. Most of them will be fairly intuitive, and I will explain why they're not. Okay, so we can transpose by a fifth at every iteration of the stat. Okay, so we can start building. Maybe let's move all of these a little down. Okay. Also, maybe let's start with less. And let's engage. Okay. Now there is a function that I'm going to use, which is called SuperLayer, and it again is one of my functions. I never remember the order of the arguments, sorry. Okay, so this it's basically a shorthand for a special kind of stat with. This has other two copies of the same note, but transposed up or down if you use a negative number by some amount. So by using this, and obviously it reduces the volume of all the nodes so that it's still the same when taken together. Okay, so this is basically a kind of detune effect, but we can also we can also do something like this. And this is something that I really like. It reminds me of like Florian Hecker's additive organs. I don't know how I call them like that. And it allows us to do interesting. It allows us to do things like chords if we use like fourths or thirds, but it also allows us to basically do additive synthesis. Okay, I'm not liking this rhythmic pattern very much, but I'm going to. Okay, let's play a bit with it now, so I can show you the potentialities of this. And let's also do something like this. So as you can see, for example, by changing the 3 onto a 16th here, I completely changed the structure of the pattern. And by combining that with a canon that was constantly changing in, well, a delay that was constantly changing in time, it can start leading to something that is quite interesting, that can vary a lot. Okay, so let's talk about SuperLayer. What I said that SuperLayer does is create other nodes that are superimposed upon the original ones in pitch. Now there is an interesting thing, which is arpeggiate. And obviously when you put the two things together, it means that nodes that are at the same time are automatically arpeggiated. And so the different nodes that you have at different heights are spaced apart, like this. Okay, now I'm going to replace arpeggiate with ply with... Actually, I'm going to replace it with ply 1. What some people don't know, because I don't think it's documented, is that if you use ply, it also automatically arpeggiates the pattern. So using, in this case, I will always use ply instead of arpeggiate. And the main reason is that I'm building a pattern that is meant to use for live performance. So I want to leave the pattern with as many affordances as I can, because I want to be able to manipulate the pattern when I'm playing live in such a way that I can always make interesting things, and I can make it sound very different if for some reason I want to at some moments. And for the same reason, instead of ply 1, I'm actually going to use ply with 1 ID, which does the same thing as arpeggiate, because I'm not putting any repetition and I'm not applying functions to any repetition. But at any moment, I can choose to actually activate the ply with. And this means that I have more variety at my hands. In general, I like to add as many affordances as I can to a pattern. I think there is a point at which it becomes too much, at which you have too much detail and too many things to work on. But I think for me, the main thing is whether the pattern can fit on a single screen. Because when it can't fit on a single screen, then you actually have to move around to find things to edit. As long as I can see it all, I like having things to edit everywhere I look. So this could be it. I'm going to do something like this. Okay, now we can start actually using the ply with stuff. And we'll do something like this. Obviously, I never said it, but obviously transup transposes things up and transdown transposes things down. They're just shortcuts for plus note or down note. Maybe let's do this. One note about this whole thing is that if you add or remove nodes from the super layer, this is obviously going to change your tempo, because the whole tempo is because the ply with adds events depending on how many nodes there are at a time. So you have to be very careful with that, because if I add some nodes here, everything is going to crash. It's actually not crashing, but okay. I'm using basically some functions like the start with or the super layer that cause everything to that create upper movements, and at the same time I'm using the ply with to apply down, like a movement down. And this is a very good design pattern. I mean, it's something that I really like doing because it creates a kind of dizzy effect. I don't know. It's a kind of effect that I like, and one thing I like about it is that it creates movements that can be seen at multiple levels, in the sense that if you play the thing really fast, you perceive it as some kind of sweeping sound, whereas if you play it slower, you perceive it as some kind of scale. And it can be fun to play with that. I mean, it can be fun to have something that can be played at different speeds and sound interesting in different ways at different speeds, because it allows you to, it adds more variety to what you can do while still making something that's interesting. So we can do this. And obviously we can have a tempo that changes with time. So we could do something, we could actually make an elastic tempo. We could make it like this. Maybe triangle. No, okay, I'm not feeling it now. I'll just set the CPS at something fixed for now. Okay, we're already at a point where we have enough stuff to play it that, I mean, I will be comfortable bringing this kind of thing live if I did some more work on it, but we're getting close to it. Some interesting things to note are that, well, as I said, if you're using S notation, you're not going to be able to figure out what to do with stat in order to make things go together. I mean, to have some polyphony and to actually have notes hit at the same time. But one thing you can always do is to just do this, to make stuff repeat after exactly one cycle, or well, after multiple cycles. Obviously is okay, but there doesn't need to do that. If we do this, the arpeggiation also applies, and we get something like this. We can also remove it. And it is also a quick tool to go back one moment and look at what you're working it with, exactly what your actual rhythm was. So you can go back to it and edit it again. Before you do this, and bring the arpeggiation back again and go back to it. Oh, one thing that I completely forgot about is panning. we're going to pan randomly for now. Sometimes I like to do fancy things with panning, but it will take more time that we currently have, and that's not something that we're going to worry about now. So I'm just going to use random panning. You're going to have to be okay with it. Okay, by the way, this is just pan by a shifted randomness. So it's just a random function basically, but in the main pattern I'm using the default random function, and in the delay, in the start, I'm using a shifted one. So as just so that the delays are not using the same pan as the main pattern, because that will be lame. I don't know, it wouldn't sound cool to me. Okay, so we have something that is quite interesting, and in my opinion, it's something that I will play live comfortably. And I think there are some main reasons why this is a good fit for live performance. And the reasons are that there are many variables that we can edit, and for, how do I say it? For most things that we care about in music, we have multiple ways to interact with them while we're playing live. More specifically, we have pitch, and more specifically within pitch, we have pitch movements, upper or down. Lower is the word before, sorry, I'm not a native speaker. So we have play width, we have super layer, and we have the transtat within the stat width. And for the rhythmic structure, we have the AST notation, we have the hat notation, and we have the repetitions within the stat width. And then we have the repetitions within the super layer. And I haven't talked about this too well, but for duration of notes, we have the sustain, but we can also change the shape of the curve. And for volume, for amplitude, we have the gain, but we also have a distortion. And in general, that's something that I recommend. It's having also for speed, we also have the CPS, obviously. Something that I recommend is figure out what are the key things behind your music and have multiple interfaces for interacting with them. Because then, usually where you're live coding, you're editing something, and maybe at some point you will try, you will want to, for example, change up the rhythmic structure a bit, and you will try to do something, but it just won't feel right. And in that case, if you have something else to interact with that aspect of music, you can move to the other variable that you have. And maybe you can brainstorm there and see if you can find something interesting. So this pattern is at a state that, as I said, I really like. And as I said, when I make tracks, I structure them for live performance. And what this usually means is that when I'm playing live, I have a document, a .tidal file, which has a starting state for the pattern, and then I have in mind some possible directions that this could go towards. And I don't have everything written down, obviously, but I have a rough idea of what I could edit to go in any direction. And so I have an idea of when something could start and where things could end, and when I could move to another completely different pattern. And so in order to do that, I would jam with this pattern for a while. I will play around with it and then look at all the things that I did that I thought were interesting, and then I will pick among them some things to think about and to listen to and to be reminded of when I'm on stage. A good way to do that is to save all the things that you do. A good way to do that is to look in your undo history. If you have an editor that saves your undo history in a non-linear way, in a tree way, that's very good. It can help you because obviously the way you proceed that does not always lend itself to a linear undo history. So I think we have 5 minutes left for this video, and so I'm going to jam around and do other things with this pattern and look for other possible directions that it could go. Okay, I think it's about time to wrap this up. So I also think I've about said everything that I wanted to say about the way I make music. I hope this was interesting to you. I hope you learned something from it, and I also hope you like my music. Obviously, if you have questions about something that I did, or about something that you might want to do, you can comment under this video, and I will do my best to keep up and try to answer everything. If you want to write to me privately, you can write to me at Telegram at Guiot, on Twitter at Guiot. If you are on the Fediverse, at merveille.town/@mxmxyt. And that was it. Thank you all for watching, and have a good day.